The harder the conflict, the greater the triumph.
A theistic serpent may be overcome by a swarm of ants.
Lead me, follow me, or get out of my way. Age wrinkles the body, quitting wrinkles the soul.
Battle buddies.
Crazy days
Battle
in the United
buddies.
States, eh?
Seriously.
Crazy times.
Shout out to our wives who are with our crazy ass kids.
Yeah, dude. And everybody knows who they are.
Yeah.
They've been a part of the show. Yeah.
We're like momfluencers right now.
Yeah.
That's who we want to be labeled as.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like how you said that because it's like there's no dad influencers
No.
out there, right?
No.
Yeah, those are just actors. That's what that is. Brad Pitt is just an actor.
Damn good one.
He watches the show.
He loves this show.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy. I actually can't even keep up with all of his text messages. Brad Pitt.
He
But he's a
loves
big
us
fan.
and Bon Iver.
Does he truly like Bon Iver?
Oh my God. On the Bon Iver forums, man, I'm a huge Bon Iver little nerd.
I know.
But he was spotted in one of the LA shows and everyone was taking photos and uploading like, dude, fucking Brad Pitt's here in the pit with us walking around.
Whoa!
Just thinking about shit.
Bon Iver has the voice of an angel.
He's great.
Have you seen him in concert?
Yes, a few times.
Angelic?
That was awesome. And it was great. Did I tell you about this Shellapalooza in Louisiana? Shellapalooza in Louisiana, it's like it's like jazz festival. It's not Shellapalooza, it's like a jazz festival or whatever. It's a big deal. Awesome. Like I saw Bruce Springsteen there, Beastie Boys.
Sponsored by oil.
Yeah.
Great.
Huey Long is like their famous person who is very corrupt. They have issues, Louisiana, but I love them. Anyway, Bon Iver setting up. My dad knows I love him. And he's like, oh shit, they got 2 drummers? My dad's thinking it's going to be like metal or like something dope. He's like, yes, like I can't wait for
Just
this.
made it hard in the paint. See, that's what happens when you do air drumming, dude.
You got to be
It's
careful with it.
irresponsible.
And then they came out and then, one of the drummers, Sean, he's like playing the keyboards and singing backup like, my dad just walked away.
It's like, it's time to get a beer.
You do this one yourself.
I'm going to follow suit and put my hat on backwards.
Hell yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special episode of Battle Buddies. We are going to be focusing on the congressional hearing that was all about UAPs today.
UAPs, otherwise known as UFOs.
Otherwise, yeah, classically known as UFOs.
What are we saying? This episode will probably be called Aliens, Why Should You Care?
Yeah?
Yeah. Or
Aliens.
Why You Should Care.
Aliens. Do you care?
Well, I think we're going to make the argument you should care about this congressional hearing about UFOs.
Or just aliens? Yeah, no, dude, crazy time. So hopefully by the time listeners are like getting this information, the congressional hearing only happened a couple days ago.
Right. Because it happened for us this morning.
Yes.
And don't
So-
worry, we listened to it twice.
We did. We truly did. So for those of you who are listening, I literally just texted Kevin this morning a link to the YouTube congressional hearing, and we watched it.
Yep.
We watched all of it. And then that led us down some interesting
Wormholes.
Yeah, so I was like, here's one of the documents that they were referring to. Here's the news article that they were referring to. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, essentially what happened was there were 3 prior military service members that are considered whistleblowers.
I wouldn't. Yes.
One of them is definitely a whistleblower.
Yes. One of them is like full on whistleblower.
David Grusch.
David Grusch.
So he's the whistleblower, and he was in the middle.
He's the one you may have heard of recently.
Yes. And so he's come out as a prior Air Force intelligence officer who is like, hey, government's being a little bit too hush-hush about the things that we may know about UFOs
Yep.
and or aliens. It's just weird because like it's hard for me to say aliens
Yep.
because that's not necessarily what we're talking about. We're talking about
Yeah, let's go through that first. We read a book
okay.
called The Seventh Tower by John Keel.
Can't say I recommend it.
I fucking love that book. I was looking at it last night. I was like, am I going to reread The Seventh Tower right now?
Oh my god.
So what's important about The Seventh Tower is a book from the late 60s. Keel is known for his work on the Mothman, which is just like what it sounds like, and his work on Bigfoot, and his work on UFO. So he is great. And what he talks about in his book, though, that I did find interesting is he says it's not so much extraterrestrials. And extraterrestrials would be aliens or people from another planet coming to us.
Right.
But then that there's also these other possibilities which we should entertain. And this is what I liked about the book, because he went through all of them, right? So then there's like intraterrestrials, which would be like from other dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
And then what he ultimately arrives at, which is I think what they hint at a lot in this interview today, which was ultra-terrestrials, which is kind of like an amalgam of like, it could be from other planets, it could be from other dimensions, it could be us from the future.
Right.
It could also be like psychic manifestations from us or from our subconscious.
Wild.
And that's kind of how you get, because I don't know if you've done a lot of Bigfoot exploring, but in Oregon, Bigfoot's like a big thing, right? And for at least nerds and dorks.
Yeah,
and
there's nothing else to do there.
my cousin was moving up there, and him and I were talking a lot. I went to go see him, and he's like, I really want to catch Bigfoot. So we were doing some Bigfoot reading, and it turns out they really think Bigfoot can go through portals.
Well, of course.
I was like, I draw the line at Bigfoot going through portals.
Yeah, like why can't it just be Bigfoot? Say, well, we never see him, so therefore portals.
Well, John Keel would say, of course it's portals, because he's an ultra-terrestrial.
Okay.
He's a manifestation, so he doesn't have like physical form like we think of it.
Is that his toilet? Does he poop into a portal? Because we haven't found Bigfoot's poop yet.
That's true.
I asked my brother, I was like, do we know people's like species based off their poop? And he was like, yeah, we can.
We're pretty good about it.
And I was like, so then how come we haven't found Bigfoot's poop? And he's like, well, I guess he cracked that code.
Are you sure we haven't found Bigfoot scat?
Well, he's Googling it. I was talking to we went camping recently, and I was talking to my family member about it, because he's pro Bigfoot. He believes in Bigfoot. And I was like, well, what about the poop? And he's like, he buries it. He buries his poop.
They absolutely think they found.
Analysis of feces and hair suspected to be Sasquatch. Okay.
And would I like updates from woodape.org?
2007. Woodape.org. Oh boy.
I'm going to say no on the updates from this website. All right, we're moving on.
There's literally, Etsy has Bigfoot poop. That's cool. All right. So yeah, listen, the thing is that it's important that we kind of not necessarily just jumble together UFOs as meaning aliens from a James Cameron movie.
Well, 'cause they talk about that a lot. That came up a lot. Like, they deny extraterrestrials, but they do say it's non-human.
Yeah. But okay. Here's where my brain goes with that. For all of you Star Wars fans out there, in the first episode 4, A New Hope, the first Star Wars, we all remember that scene in the very beginning where R2-D2 and C-3PO get launched off of the escape pod. And Darth Vader is like, well, who's on that escape pod? Blah, blah. And they're like, we scanned it. There are no life forms on that escape pod. But there was robots, right? So that's where my mind goes. We're going to get into it here. But so for those listeners, for those of you who don't know, I used to be in military intelligence. I was in intelligence in the Marine Corps. I went to a naval intelligence school in Virginia. I had a TSSCI, and words are important.
They are.
In the intel world. Like, you can literally, based off of how you word things, that can completely change a classification for something.
Well, and listen to David Grusch try to talk. He is really boring to listen to in these interviews.
See, I actually, because of my background, I like him a little bit.
Like, I'm sure you can appreciate his art, but he can't say anything.
No.
And you're like, great.
Yeah. So, listeners, while we were watching it this morning, Kevin was texting me, give us something.
Give us anything.
Give us anything. Well, so that's why I texted my brother that I actually kind of prefer the way that the naval aviators were disseminating information as opposed to the Air Force guy. And even as a branch, I kind of prefer the way that, like, the Navy was just, here you go, here's the videos, whereas the Air Force is like, we're not going to say shit.
Yeah.
It seems that way. I don't know. Considering the Air Force is probably got the most information on these types of things, that might be why they're a little bit more hush-hush about it in the first place.
But let's back up. We're getting excited.
We are getting excited.
We're very excited. This is great. I like this energy. So if we're following the timeline, it sounds like David Grusch may have been like he's like the big whistleblower. He's the name that I first started seeing in headlines.
Mm-hmm.
And in the congressional hearing, they had a timeline somewhere around like 2017 that there was a reporter for the New York Times, I believe, who
Mhm.
kind of broke the story of there are a lot more unidentified objects that we've encountered and interacted with than have been reported and that Congress and the public are aware of. Is that accurate
Mm-hmm.
from what we understand?
Yeah, I kept the article up so that I can mention it here. The article is by a one Layla Keene. Leslie Keene, excuse me. So she put the New York Times article that one of the congressmen mentioned in the hearing today, where he was like, for those of you who are listening to this, like I highly recommend it. The article is entitled "No Longer in Shadows, Pentagon's UFO Unit Will Make Some Findings Public." And so I think we all remember being so the date on this article was July 23rd, 2020. For those of you who don't remember, we were turning on the news and it was all about COVID at the time. So we were so stressed out in our public life at that time in 2020 that the Pentagon came out with UFO shit and we did not care. Yeah, that's it right there. The No Longer in Shadows, Pentagon's UFO. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that story broke. It kept building. I think David Grusch came after that as a whistleblower.
Totally.
So he came out, I think, within this last year.
Yeah.
So he came out and he said like, "Hey, like shit's wackier than you even think." His stuff's really cryptic because he's a whistleblower who's following all the rules of being a whistleblower,
Yeah.
which is, I will concede the point to Spencer that it is interesting watching him talk because
Yeah.
he's not trying to get kicked out of the country. He's like, I'm a whistleblower, civilian whistleblower who's doing it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, the story keeps building and building until we have this like full on congressional hearing, which, as Hannah, my wife, put it, she's been on the show before, we assumed was going to just be them like, "So you believe in little green aliens?" And like them just making fun of them. And it was not that.
So this makes me think of Joe Rogan says this ad nauseum, but the whole Ronald Reagan thing where he said if aliens came down and invaded, like the whole world would get together and it would be like humanity versus these aliens.
Sure.
Like and that was kind of what we saw today. It was like the first time where all of these congressmen were like, "This is bipartisan.
Yeah,
this
it really
has
was.
nothing to do with left versus right." And it was extremely refreshing to
Okay.
watch them speak.
I
together.
felt like this was a glimpse. Okay, so the subheading that we were having, right, of this aliens, why you should care about this, is if you want to see the government working
Yeah.
and like how the government works when it's not a show, which is like, this is such like a hyperbolic statement because it's about fucking aliens. And so like, you think like if any time you were going to make it a show and like a politicized show, this would be it. But for whatever reason, they got diehard ass people to do this. And so these people they are left and right of the aisle,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all hella nice to
Yep.
each other. They call each other by their full names.
Mm-hmm.
They yield their times to each other.
Yeah.
They thank each other for the interesting questions.
Yeah.
They like purposely say like, you know, and I'm great friends with this person who's across the aisle, which, you know, when they're on like fucking Fox News later on, they can't say that.
Yeah.
And so this is, and whatever the left equivalent is, they don't say that as well about their right counterparts. Like this is how it works when there's an actual thing to discuss, when this isn't something for an election to gain a quick vote.
Yeah, I suppose the only other thing that would they act similarly on is like probably the last time that was like 9/11 maybe.
Sure.
When we got attacked, they were probably like, "Okay, let's work together. Like our country got attacked, yada yada yada."
That was a big swing and a miss, though.
Yeah.
Go watch the report. No good.
Yeah. So I guess fair point. Like name another time where they were this
Where we got to see it. Because I'm sure this happens all the time, right? For like
behind closed doors. You
behind
mean?
closed doors. Like, hey, we got to solve. This is what Aaron Sorkin does really well in The West Wing, where it's like a character will be like, I just want to solve this one specific issue. Like, this is why I'm running. This is why I became a senator. And then they meet behind a closed door and then they actually solve a problem. But I think part of the issue is this is still an us versus them, but this is about intelligence,
Yeah.
right? The thing that came up through most of these congressmen, what they were really pissed about was, why don't I have this report?
Yes.
And why, when I asked for this report, can I not get this report?
Mm-hmm.
And that was really, really, really interesting.
So, to caveat as to why should we care? Do you care? Does this matter? And why the hell is Battle Buddies doing this,
Right.
right? So, the naval aviator who was the prior enlisted Marine who went and became a pilot, what's his name? I feel bad. So, David Fravor. That's how we
Yep.
say his name?
David Fravor.
Fravor?
That
David
sounds right.
Sure.
Sorry, David.
So, the naval aviator, whom I like him a lot.
Dude,
He's
his story is fucking bonkers. This is
super interesting character.
I was asking Spencer, like, is this not every enlisted Marine's dream?
Yeah.
You enlist as a Marine, you're like, whoa, enlisted life's really hard. And then you're like, they get to fly airplanes.
Bro, huge dong. All right. So that dude's hanging dong.
So then he went and got a degree and then started flying. And then he started flying like F-18s or something.
Yeah, he was on the Nimitz, became a pilot.
Squadron commander.
Yeah.
Top
dude.
20 pilot. Like,
And then saw UFO.
and then saw UFO. Oh my God, this is the
And then
best.
speaking to Congress about it. No big deal. So as far as why we're like, why the hell do we care? So he said something really interesting in the hearing that like really stuck out to me, where the congressman, because for me, not reading the intelligence reports and all this stuff and like being obsessed with words, I'm like, people should be really careful with saying like this is dangerous, right? Or like this is an act of war, or why we should care. But he was like, yes, this is national security, because if somebody does find this technology, like for instance, Russia or whomever does, and they reverse engineer it, the fact that somebody could just appear like that and then immediately go away and we can't do anything about it is a problem.
Right.
That's a huge problem.
And David Grusch's thing, if I understand it correctly, part of the reason he's whistleblowing is because he's afraid of, because it's so secret and Congress doesn't have oversight, that it's going to get in the hands of like one dude at Halliburton is going to now be in charge of technology hundreds of years, 50 years, 100 years ahead of where we are now, which like that sounds like that's a big deal. And that's kind of, I don't totally understand David Grusch because he's doing so much like, talk to me in a SCIF, which I'll explain a SCIF a little bit later.
We're going to get there.
But I feel like that's part of the issue that he's bringing up a lot.
Yeah. So as far as the technology that they're talking about with these vehicles, a article, well, not an article, but a document that is public to everybody listening to this.
I read it.
It's a Defense Intelligence Agency study called Advanced Space Propulsion Based on Vacuum Space-Time Metric Engineering.
I felt hella cool reading it.
Dude.
No idea what it was talking about.
Okay.
I was like, I feel so cool reading these equations.
This stuff is the gist of it, the way that I explain it, this technology that these UFOs may have, in theory, is that these vehicles move space-time around them. They manipulate the atmosphere around them rather than moving through the atmosphere.
Yeah, because his whole thing was like the technology. We understand physics to be that like as you accelerate, the mass accelerates or whatever. And so he's like, what if it decelerated the mass?
Right.
And I was like, well, you can't just say that.
Yeah. and here's the thing. For all of you, like, okay, whatever. All the math is in there.
Yeah, the math is
show
wild.
All the math.
I don't understand it.
Of course not.
But I watched Oppenheimer and they said, do you feel the math? Like, do you hear them? I was like, I can hear this kind of. Like, yeah, I can hear this.
Okay. All right. Yeah. It's like a beautiful mind.
Yeah.
Like it's just like floating around you. So the reason that's interesting is because the naval aviator to the left, his name was Graves.
Yes.
So Graves.
Also a cool guy.
Very cool. So Graves, as opposed to Fravor, who was on the West Coast in San Diego when he saw the UFO.
Off Catalina. He was in Long Beach.
He was having a good time.
Yeah. The report says, beautiful ass day.
Yeah, he's
off the coast of Catalina.
He's like, for those of you who lived in San Diego, this was a perfect day. the weather was perfect. And we're like, yeah, we know.
We get it.
We do know.
Catalina's awesome.
Yeah, everybody becomes a weatherman in San Diego. It's about 75 in it. So this other aviator, Graves, was on the East Coast, off of the coast of Virginia Beach in Oceano, which is where I went to intelligence school, kind of nearby there. And he explains seeing these Tic Tac type.
The Tic Tac for you young folk.
I don't like that.
It's a mint.
Yes,
It's a mint.
It's a little candy.
And he, Fravor was like, it's just like I saw a giant propane tank.
Yes. He's like, he saw a giant propane tank.
We can watch this little video of it.
I just want to say, before we do that,
sorry.
as far as like all the math involved in this document, he said that he saw one of those steady still in like a hurricane-like environment.
Damn.
So that's where it comes into like, it's able to manipulate space-time around them rather than moving through it.
Right.
It's hard to like wrap our minds around, but that's the kind of technology that this is.
Yes. And David Fravor, Han and I were talking because his story, he's so freaking iron tight, like as a reporter, because he's never had a UFO experience before and he's never had one after, which is very good to your credibility. And
that's a good point.
His co-pilot, is it called a wizard? The guy that sits behind them? He called it a wizard in the meeting.
Oh, that's cool.
I was like, that's pretty dope.
Yeah.
And so he said that he saw him and that it actively jammed his radar and that the Nimitz tracked it. And I listened to an interview with the guy on the Nimitz that tracked it. And he's like, yeah, dude, it was fucking wild. And that's why we sent David to go see it.
Yeah.
And then David's like, oh shit, he's flying right next to me. And like, so it was wild for them.
It was able to spontaneously move from one spot to the next. Like at one point they thought it was gone, and then they're like, dude, actually it's like 14 clicks this way.
Right.
And you're like, what?
So just so you don't think like this is just one guy making a story, this was spotted by like multiple people at multiple different areas, and they are willing to put it on their record.
Yeah.
So that tells you something, because I don't know if I would, right? Like, if you're an officer and you're like, I finally get to fly fucking F-18s, like this is the dream. Every person wants to be me right now because I get to go really fast.
This is where I think that the Air Force and the Navy differ. I think that it's interesting. I think that the Air Force is far more hush-hush, and I think the Navy is like, this is what I saw.
Yeah.
I already have my notoriety. I don't need to do anything. Like,
right.
I don't know. It's just interesting to see culturally how the Air Force uses this information versus the Navy.
Well, in the Navy one, he said that he gave his report and they were like, thank you. And then, and then just fucking buried it and they asked him like, what did your squadron commander say? He's like, I'm the squadron commander. And he's like, oh man, your reputation's solid. That's so good. Okay,
so we're gonna watch this Tic Tac video. Which, by the way, if you've not seen this yet, you're living under a rock.
So this is like the 2004. This is 90 seconds of what they captured.
Yeah, and so
we'll describe it. Spencer, describe this as we see it. We've seen some of these like radar right here or something.
Yeah, this is essentially like typically when jets do reconnaissance, this is like the vehicle with which you would see the reconnaissance. And right now it's kind of hard to make out, but like this little this little radar has its like what would you call these two lines brackets, these little brackets that have honed in on this aerial, like looking it like it looks like a propane tank. It's just like an oblong circle,
and I believe they're using infrared here, and what's scary to them is that it wasn't producing any infrared. It wasn't, there was no propulsion leaving it.
No
so like
propulsion.
You shouldn't really be allowed to be in the air without emitting something.
Is this the one from Virginia or off of San Diego?
This is San Diego, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. Yikes. So they're flying through.
And it just like, so those aren't like time jumps as I understand it, when it just suddenly got smaller. It just went away. And then it would just catch up to him. And then he would say like, oh shit, it's right on me again.
Yeah. Can you pull up another one? Can you pull up another and see?
Woo!
And then so here, this is what I want. This is the kind of stuff I want to see. So now, listeners, if you're listening and you're on Spotify, pull up Spotify and open it up because you can see this. If you're listening on another platform, I'm sorry. But this one's actually cool because you can see the clouds, and it's giving you reference to how this thing is just smoothly moving across. Again, the biggest thing here that these are like Navy pilots. This is a military training operation. They are treating this with military discipline. This is my favorite part. So it shows them above the
Woo!
water.
Whoa, that's so fast.
Yes,
What's it
dude.
doing? Oh, because it went down to the water. That's right.
So at one point you hear the guy who's got so right here, when he's like, I got it. I got it. And so they track the Tic Tac, and this thing is booking, bro.
Yeah, hell
It is
yeah.
moving across the water. Yeah. And so that's the biggest thing here as far as like battle buddies is concerned, is like, what could people possibly do with this technology?
Yeah.
And so that's where we get stuck in the weeds.
Yeah. Also, like, the intelligence is interesting because I don't know how you feel about it. Because they did talk about, in the beginning of the congressional hearing, they said, let's play devil's advocate here. So under what circumstances should we not be privy to this kind of information, or should this information not become public?
That was wonderful.
That was a great question to start it out with.
And
Like,
do you
let's
remember
start
what
out.
they said?
They said when it became a matter of national security.
So yeah, they were saying when it becomes a matter of national security, and then they are talking about certain ways that we get signals intelligence, then yes, those details would be classified with how we were able to get it. But once it becomes an image like what we're looking at right now, why does that have to be classified?
Right. Okay, because if it became, or they said also if it showed a weakness within our ability to capture it, like on radar, that would also be bad.
Let me give you another example.
Okay.
You remember when we killed Al-Zawahiri with a drone strike?
Yes.
The way we were able to find Al-Zawahiri was classified.
Oh, okay.
But we got him and we did it, and that was unclassified. It should be the same thing with this information. Like, we don't need to know how you got it.
Right.
But
we
it
get
should,
that some things have to be secret for national
Yep.
security.
I get it that your
I don't want to know how
execution-
they're going to get rid of the nukes that are coming to us, because I know that I've been reading about the laser shields, right? Like, you just keep working on those laser shields and missile shields.
Yeah. But this stuff should be public. And that's why it was cool to watch the hearing, because everyone was on the same page.
Yeah, they got that. The people were like, that's fine.
And they even asked in the congressional hearing, they're like, what do you think that we should do to like help people? And they're like, this is what we should do. This is progress, having conversations and all that. So
I want to talk about one of the things David Grusch said, and then why he would say SCIF. So one of the wacky things, David Grusch said some wacky things. Didn't hate them all. Kind of liked a lot of them.
can you pull up a picture of David Grusch?
Yeah, that's
for folks to look at while we're talking about him. Here's the guy.
This is from today.
This is today. He looks angry there. He's not an angry guy.
Okay, so David Grusch, some of the things that he said that he had access to, or that he was privy to, or that he had intelligence on, was about these like material buildings and materials not from this planet, is how he worded it. And then he said that they have been injuries from people trying to reverse engineer the ships and the biologics of this non-terrestrial entity.
Yes.
So like that's like a crazy thing to say, because what he's essentially saying is like Independence Day, they are operating on the alien, and the alien woke up and he's like, did somebody survive that encounter and then go tell the writers of Independence Day, like, yo, I got a cool scene for you?
Yeah.
Craziest scene of my life.
Yeah, for sure.
So then what they would say like, well, wait, are you saying that you have an alien? And he's like, I can neither confirm nor deny that, but if you want to talk to me in a SCIF, I'd be more than happy to. And so I was like, what the hell is a SCIF? And Hannah's like, it's a boat. And I'm like, I think it's a boat too, but that doesn't sound right. So
I can talk to you guys on a boat about this.
I was like, this doesn't make sense.
Let's go to international waters.
I was like, is this some weird like 1800 treaty? Like, and if you want to talk about secret information, you got to go on a small boat.
I got a dinghy that we can talk about some secret information. That's hilarious. Okay, so did you look up what a SCIF was?
Yeah.
What'd you get?
All right, let's have me say what a SCIF is, not the guy who's been in one. So a SCIF is a room covered in aluminum foil and acoustic panels.
Okay, so a SCIF stands for Specially Compartmented Information Facility. Okay, a SCIF is a place, like Kevin was saying, So the one that I worked in was in Camp Pendleton. It was a building with no windows. It was very boring. For all of you Gen Zers out there, can't bring your cell phone in there.
Or your Apple Watch.
Or your watch. That's right. Anything that can be tracked in that kind of manner, you can't bring in. Again, there's no windows, so when you're in
I feel
there,
like I wouldn't want to bring anything in there anyway because I don't want to get in trouble.
well, yeah.
I wouldn't want to they'll bring me a pencil. Like if I need a pencil, there'll be a pencil.
You
in there.
are essentially walking into like a safe.
Yeah.
Like old school Batman, like Joker stole from this safe in a bank. It's a huge safe building. Like you literally have to type in a code and they lock you in there, and it's a whole thing. I remember for a while our SCIF door had broke and we had to stand watch on it while they were getting it fixed. Like I had to go sleep there overnight to watch it while, yeah, crazy shit. Like you're armed and you're like, if anybody comes in here, I have to fucking shoot them.
That's crazy.
Like shit like that. So the whole thing is like, I mean, even my Intel school was a SCIF. You're sitting around waiting before you start school. You're sitting around waiting for your clearance to clear so that you can like enter the fucking building to learn all this shit.
So that makes sense now. The movie, The Report with Adam Driver in it that I reference a lot.
Yeah, I need to watch that.
The only set in it is a SCIF.
Oh, really?
Because that's where he gets the report.
Okay.
And then he is a whistleblower, so he brings it out.
Oh, okay.
He brings it out of there.
Yeah. I'm sure on TV shows, SCIFs are like you put your fucking hand on a thing and it's all very like Mission Impossible looking. But
His was he had to walk to a guard and the guard would ask him, do you have anything that would endanger America? Like he had some like speech about it, and then he had to verbally say no. And in that way, when he did, it was like bad.
Yeah, so listeners, if you're familiar, if you listened to our show where I had my brother on, and he talks about, nuclear engineering in the Navy.
Hot rot makes steam. I think about that all the time.
Hot rot makes steam. Kevin's brother also, when they were studying for school, they had to study in like a facility where it's a classified facility.
Yeah, and then they had to burn their notes at the end of the class. It's crazy. How much fun would that be, though?
There was a legend at my, so I went to it was called Naval Marine Corps Intelligence Training Command, NMITC, we called it.
Rolls off the tongue.
NMITC. And there was legend of what they called the Dirty 30. And there was a class in the Navy who had, an instructor had convinced all 30 of these sailors to take some material back to their barracks rooms and study. They got caught and they all got discharged from the Navy.
Holy shit.
It's called the Dirty 30. Yeah.
The Navy is pretty serious about that.
You will get kicked out real fast. So that's a long story short story long. A SCIF is just a big building where you can talk about top secret shit.
Okay.
That's where you have literally a secret internet in there. It's called the SIPRnet. And then you have a top secret internet called JWIX. And
not that secret anymore.
Google it. Ask, figure let me know if you can Google that shit. Pretty sure you can. So it's all just classified levels of internet in there. And again, dudes like David Grusch you can go in there with congressmen and be like,
because he can pull up the report and like he's like, you need to read this report, or I can talk now that this report's open, something like that.
So that's really smart that Kevin just said that. So that's being called read into something. In the intelligence field, when you are read into something, you have to get briefed as to all these different types of terminologies, and you got to get background information before someone can just be like, aliens exist. Like you have to be like this, boom. Okay, now you are read into the information. Now I can speak to you about it. So just because I have a top secret clearance, if I'm not read into something, I do not have the clearance for that information.
Got it.
So just because I have a top secret clearance, no clue what happened to JFK.
Right.
I don't know who shot JFK.
Right.
Whatever the fuck, right? Like everyone's like, oh, you were in intelligence? What's the Area 51 like? It's like, well, I'm not read into that.
Right.
I don't know what the fuck is going on there, right? And so that's what he's talking about. He has to read all these people into something, and then they will be able to hear this information. Good. That being said, there was some stuff that they were talking about where the congressmen were like, we were trying to get in the SCIF, but we didn't get access. We weren't granted access. It's like, yeah, bro. Like it's a pretty serious. Did your background check go through? Like did a liaison from the CIA ask you about the day that you skipped that one day of high school?
Right.
Like it's a whole process. It costs money.
Yep.
I want to say that my top secret clearance, I think it cost like, I think it was like $50,000.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But I think they were also talking about, though, during some of those times, things that they were supposed to have access to, and that they had to like threaten and make them like verbally say why their agency wasn't allowed access through this pathway to even get part of the documents. Like what I think Congress was alluding to is the intelligence community, the Pentagon essentially has gone too far with like hoarding its intelligence, and it has all of this intelligence, but we have none of it.
What was that noise?
I don't know. Hope it's not the TV falling on us.
It sounded like something clicking over here.
Spooky things.
That was weird.
Really? A little alien?
Is
A little
the
alien?
government? Is that the government listening to us? We're getting tapped right now.
That means we're hitting a good spot. So the Pentagon. But okay, you were in the intelligence community. Is it too much like I think what a lot of the congressmen were saying, if I'm understanding correctly, is like we're making things top secret that don't need to be top secret. And like we're like there's no transparency, and it's like so confusing and opaque that like who the fuck knows what we're supposed to know or not know.
And I think that's kind of the whole thing that this Mr. Grusch guy is kind of going for here. He's like, who are you guys to say that this is information that the public can't know? Right. Especially if now...
Or even our representatives of the government.
Sure.
Like, so I get that like you can't just give it straight away to the public. I don't like that as a person that just wants all the information. But like I get it. Slow it down. But why isn't my elected representative allowed access to enough of it for them to like
make a decision?
To make a decision.
Sure.
Like that's why they're elected. This is representative democracy.
Right. Absolutely. Well, let me ask you this. Have you seen a UFO?
No, I want to.
Yeah, every time I go camping, I say it out loud.
This was when we were doing our occult book readings. I was just like, I fucking want something supernatural to happen to me so badly. I want it, and I almost have it happen, and then I'm like, I think this is just the wind.
Okay, let's take it one step further. Do you know someone who's seen a UFO?
A UFO? No.
Really?
Yeah. Have you? Have you seen a UFO? Do I know somebody that's seen a UFO?
Okay, so I've experienced things that are UFO adjacent.
Okay.
Do you remember the game La Migra that we used to play in high school?
Yeah.
Okay. Listeners, there's a game that we played growing up called La Migra where
times were different.
We used to get in vehicles, other people were on foot. You had to make it from one destination to another in your town, and other people in cars had to try to catch you.
And we go into people's backyards. It was wild.
Yeah. Okay, so one time while we were playing La Migra, we were on Oliver Road in Fairfield, and me and my buddy were walking down this road, and we saw a flash that like lit up from the street all the way up to like the sky. Like this half of the sky lit up with half of like what's going on the ground, and it went all the way back. It was just like, pew, like
that's
that.
how fast the alien wanted to get out of Fairfield.
Well,
all they got is the Jelly Belly and Grande Circle. Woo!
Yeah. Yes. When people go to Fairfield, they're passing through. They're not going to Fairfield.
Although you guys had some Indian pizza that was really good for a while.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, it's over by Dave's Liquor. But anyway,
Chicago.
So that alien shit was over by there.
It's the greatest place.
And so me and my friend were like, "Did you see that?" And it was like, "Yeah, what was that?" And we were like, "Who fucking knows?" But when you're surrounded by a bunch of logical people, we don't just immediately say aliens. But I can't explain it. Right. I don't know what it was. That being said, right? So our podcast has a TikTok account, and
not a Tic Tac.
Yes, a TikTok,
UFO.
The shitty social media thing. And so like sometimes like me and my wife will just compare what the algorithm spits at us at any given day. And so mine is a lot of UFO videos.
Cool.
Like a lot of UFO conspiracy theories and a lot of UFO videos. And that is that's where my mind is going now, is like, since there is so much videoing and just people documenting now that everyone has a camera in their pocket. I mean, dude, literally just right now, dude, you and I could literally type into Google right now, July 26th, UFO sightings. Tons of videos will pop up of some that happened today.
Yep.
And so I don't know if you remember, but in the hearing, they were like, what are some things that people could do? Like, what do you think that we could do? Like, who should they notify? And they were like, well, it would have to be a signals-based intelligence thing. And so what they're saying, what they mean by that is that we start gathering data of all of the people in the United States sending videos. So then we become the signals intelligence, which I was like, that's dope.
That's cool.
That's a cool idea. And that is the way that we would have to do it, is like we need to start tracking. I'm sure maybe somebody is, like this dude, David Knapp in the back right here. Do you know this guy in the back?
No, but he was taking crazy notes.
That's
the whole
David
time.
Knapp.
Okay.
So he's on that podcast that we listen to, Weaponized.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he does that podcast. And so does that guy right there. These dudes are like huge in the UFO community.
They were very good in their interview.
Yeah.
On last podcast.
Dude, yeah, they're no joke. But somebody, it probably needs to be a government agency, needs to track all of these UFO sightings and see if we can find some trends and tactics here.
Also, a big part was they're saying we have to destigmatize it.
Totally.
Especially when you're talking about the Air Force. He's
Dude.
like, they were saying, just off your estimations, how much of the Air Force, how much are we not reporting? He's like, I think 5% of people report.
So 95% or not.
And what he's saying is not that like they see a UFO, but that they see something odd. And if I am an intelligence officer for the Air Force who's in charge of keeping our skies safe,
Yeah.
and I'm like, 95% of the pilots aren't telling me when they see something wacky, like it could be anything.
That's shitty leadership across the board.
Yeah, like that's bad. But then I was thinking, like, would my father-in-law have said something if he saw a UFO? Like,
so listeners,
know.
before we started a podcast, we had a book club where we just read books from the last podcast on the left.
Yep.
And we were talking about aliens, and we
read the first declassified report together.
Totally,
too. Yeah,
totally.
that was
Like
fun.
it was like a Pentagon thing. And I asked Kevin and Hannah, I was like, because their dad was in the Air Force, and I was like, would he have said something? And Kevin was like, no.
Nope.
He would have been like, I did so much goddamn work to get
Yeah,
here.
exactly. Like, it was really hard to get to the Air Force Academy. I did not like it.
Saying shit,
Yeah.
dude. So that's the thing. Literally, he technically could possibly have seen something. That dude spends a lot of time in the sky, no? So for all we know, he probably has seen things multiple times and is like, let's ignore it. Just ignore
You didn't
it.
see that.
Have you heard the theory? So conspiracy theories are fun. So listeners,
So much fun.
listeners, just so we're
jumping away now.
yeah. Now I just want to talk about fun, silly things. Have you heard the conspiracy theory that these are travelers from the future?
Yeah.
So where are you going? Where do you? Let's dive into that for a second.
Let's do it. Well, so that the object they found would have been a traveler from the future come back to either give them the technology so that they can get there faster to subvert something bad that was going to happen. That's kind of like the Terminator theory.
Like the Ukraine war or like World War III, which is
swing and-
about to be popping off.
Big swing and misses. Or I was thinking, I haven't really read this one, but I was like, one thing that they had said, which I thought was fun, which was the congressman was like, okay, you got to answer this question for us. If these are so advanced and they're able to do so many things, how are they crashing? And then the guy said, listen, I'm
like that answer,
an air, like I'm a pilot or whatever, like we do missions. There's always a certain amount of mission failures that you have to accept inside a parameter of like a campaign. And that's true.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, if there's like an accident, maybe it's somebody honing in the ability of like time travel. Like this was like a mistake. And they're like, oh, I'm not supposed to be here right now.
Yeah.
Like I was just trying to get to the Wendy's faster.
Yes.
And I went too fast. I went backwards.
Yeah. So listeners, if you open up the document, which we'll have these links in the notes for our show, but the document that we were talking about from the DIA earlier about the type of technology that these vehicles in theory may be using, black holes is a thing that it talks about. Like just manipulating and making black holes.
That's crazy.
So yeah, it's like literally in theory, these technically could be travelers from a different timeline. And so I don't know where I heard it. I probably heard it on the fucking Joe Rogan Experience, but they were talking about how there's a conspiracy theory out there right now that like within the congressional hearings and things like that, they apparently have heard about a certain date that these UFOs are coming back and trying to manipulate. And if that date is said, then that date is going to like change our trajectory.
Whoa.
If we know a certain date.
Okay. That's fun.
That is fun.
That's fun.
I
Hell
like
yeah.
that kind
Hell
of
yeah.
shit. It's like, are we in a Marvel movie right
Yeah.
now? Like, what is this? So, yeah. At the end of the day, so like, what's the bottom line up front? Where are we right now? After you've listened to everything, we listened to the congressional hearing, we've read multiple documents today, we've read the articles. Where are we at?
Okay. So, pragmatically, I think where I'm at is I'm really interested in this debate about what things get classified, like the mechanisms with which the Pentagon is classifying things that Congress isn't liking. And I want that to be more public, like that process, so that I understand it better and that can actually start being talked about in like our mainstream media. Because I think that is like right now a really important topic. If people are talking about it in this like really chivalrous way or whatever, like really like kind way, then like clearly like most of people are upset about it. Like the bureaucracy's gotten out of hand, which that's shocking to me that like our bureaucracy's gotten out of hand because we work in public education and the bureaucracy never gets in the way of teaching ever. It's never happened. So like what? So that's like the pragmatic side of me is like, I think that's like a today issue. Like we got to start sorting that out now before some crazy shit happens. Cause if everything's getting locked down so much, then we're getting this lopsided Pentagon that controls fucking everything. And then like, how is Congress supposed to vote on Pentagon? They're just going to start rubber stamping all of Pentagon's things. And they're just going to start saying, trust us because we can't show you. That's not cool long term. I don't like that. That's how you get weird imbalances of power. Where's the check?
Mm-hmm. So you're saying transparency is worthwhile?
Yeah, even if it's not necessarily like we see everything, but I think they made a really good case that the process they're supposed to follow or historically have followed for classifying things is not being followed. That they're just classifying everything and then putting it into a big server is kind of how I saw it. And I don't know if that's true or not. That's how I felt.
Okay.
Existentially, I'm way more open to aliens.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah, or like,
Yeah.
because I've been more on the like Jungian, like this is psychic projections from our subconscious, because that's really fun for me because as like someone who studied ancient literature, that explains ancient monsters and ancient folklore stuff.
That's true.
As a parable and as like us psychically projecting this parable.
It's a good point, like mythology and all of that. Yeah, okay.
So then this is like the new form of it. Right, like this is what we're interested in now. It's like
this is why I love talking to Kevin.
This is fun.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So like that could be fun because then maybe that's not true, and maybe it is like an actual fucking thing happening, and these bureaucrats have to deal with it, which is also fucking hilarious.
It's wild watching.
They had to talk about it.
Yes, multiple times today. I had to remind myself that I'm watching a congressional hearing about UFOs. like the day the earth stood still shit. Like this is really fucking happening.
And they had to do it through because it's not like in the movies where like all of a sudden bureaucracy doesn't matter and like you just get to like good morning, and like it's not that. It's like okay, article PPD subdivision 3 whistleblower nonsense thing is happening. Like oh my god, this is hella boring. Like this is not how movies have shown me we're gonna learn about aliens. But this is how we will learn about aliens.
Yes, slowly but surely, shit's coming out where it's like, man, I guess Tom DeLonge from Blink-182 is not exactly batshit crazy.
Yeah.
Turns out.
Was he a believer in aliens?
yeah, dude, he's huge into aliens. That's why he wrote that song, Aliens Exist. Hey, Mom, there's something in the back room.
That's a good song.
Yeah.
Where are you?
So my bottom line up front, is...
Bottom line up front.
The bluff. Yes, sir. Again, I agree with you. The idea of transparency and how we are going to disseminate information is going to change. So there's the battle of that, right? We're battle buddies. We talk about conflict. Right now, there's the conflict of we've seen how the government uses information. Fucking Oppenheimer just dropped. Like it's
so good.
It's just an interesting time, right?
It is
like to see what the government can do with really powerful technology, right?
Yes. And
so
the information that they have.
And the information they have. So that's the battle that's going on. Is the American public is like, fuck, man, I don't know, man. I've been reading a lot on this rectangular device,
right?
And obviously some of it's bullshit, but some of it's not bullshit.
Right.
It turns out. And so that's where my mind is at, is like the idea of transparency is going to shift here. The idea of like what we deserve to know. Okay. And so That is cool to me. The idea of
what we need to not know. Like maybe it needs to be more of like there has to be a burden of proof that we don't need to know it. Something like that, right? Like rather than why do I have to prove I need to know something? Why can't it be like you have to prove I don't?
Gotcha. So you're saying like, why is it that the government just has to assume that we're too dumb to know?
Or
like,
to be able to comprehend
you guys
it.
can't handle this.
Like,
It's
I get-
well, who are you to say that?
Exactly.
though?
Like, is this a national security risk? No, then like,
Let me know.
yeah, fuck you. Like,
Yeah.
prove to me that I don't need to know it somehow.
Agreed. So there's that. And then I literally had my opinion changed today by the Fravor.
Fravor is our boy.
Yeah, I like
We
him a
might have
lot.
to get a picture of him to put.
Dude, let's ask him to be on the podcast.
I don't think he needs to be.
He might.
What did that guy call him? He called him gold-plated reputation.
Gold-plated reputation. Everyone clapped for him.
I know.
They were like, "Good job, buddy.
Like, this fucking guy, why is he here?
You fucking killed it." And like he was just smiling, like, "I know I don't need to be here, but I'm trying to do the right thing." At the end of the day, he was trying to do the right thing.
Good.
And so for the longest time, with my background, I was like, I don't know if saying the words that this is a threat, right? And then hearing these naval aviators being like, "Look, dude, the fact of the matter is like commerce is a thing, and a lot of things are flown on the daily. Civilians are flown in airspace on the daily,
Right.
And if there are things going around in the airspace that are just straight up just appearing out of nowhere, that is dangerous,
Right.
and that needs to be addressed." And I'm like, good point.
Right. Because they can't even say it's benign or not because they don't have enough. They don't know what it is, or they're not telling us what it is.
It
That
doesn't
matters.
sound like they're saying much to even the government.
Right.
And so, like, how are they supposed to come up with conclusions and solve things?
Well, David Grusch says essentially that they have an object, they're reverse engineering, and they have a non-human biological that they are.
And he's saying the United States.
Yes.
Yeah. So imagine
But
if other
he's saying
countries
it's
have
private.
it too.
Like it's going to be private.
Like
That's what
fucking
okay.
like Lockheed Martin or
Yeah,
some
like
shit.
it's seriously going to be
Yeah.
Halliburton's
Yeah.
like monster alien.
And how do we feel about that?
I think that's part of David Grusch is
So not
what he's
good.
hinting at.
Not good. He's kind of being a hero right now.
If he's telling the truth. Because the whole thing could be like, he's just kind of fucking with us because everything's so fucking classified. Every time they go into a SCIF, he's like, I got you. And then like, but you can't talk about
I
this.
don't know, man. I don't know.
I don't think he would waste
think
time. He's pretty smart.
Yes. I think he's understanding the weight of the situation. I think he understands what would happen if he was bullshitting. He was Air Force intelligence officer, like,
Yeah, he did well.
and then he's surrounded by these Navy pilots
Yeah.
who are like
On either side, who saw like, I don't know if Fravor saw combat, but the other guy did, right? The other guy was like in Enduring Freedom or something. He was like,
no,
in
I think they both saw combat.
Yeah.
That dude was on the Nimitz, and yeah, he's probably dropped some bombs. Yeah, he's probably seen some combat, and he was a Marine.
Yeah.
Yeah, the odds are only up and up and up. And then he worked in the private
Oh,
sector.
so he's a defense contractor,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. So who knows, man?
His story was great. They're like, why are you here? He's like, I don't want to be. He's like, but my friend, like, I made a promise to my friend that I would, or something like that. Like,
See-
it's literally like somebody, he would tell the story, because he's like, it became a story we would tell. Because no one cared about it. So it just became a story they would tell people. Like, dude, I fucking saw a
Yeah.
Tic Tac through the
Yep.
air. Like, and then one of his buddies that he respected, I guess, was like, no, you have to tell people
The
this.
right thing
Like,
to do.
This is the right thing to do. He's
Mhm.
like, okay.
See, I think these guys are trying to be on the right side of history, man. Veterans are in an interesting spot, man. And I said this after we had Lyle on the show.
Yeah.
That it's just an interesting time to be a veteran where they are like have grown from their trauma and they're
Mhm.
finally out of the weeds with that. And they can be like, now it's time to just share.
Yeah.
Now it's time to share so everyone else can like learn from the shit that we did. Kind of like World War II veterans.
Yep.
Were like, like once they got into like the mid 60s, they're like, you guys want to hear some shit?
Yeah.
I'm like, I can tell you some shit. I will tell you some stories. Like, get PBS over here. I'll talk now.
I know. My mother-in-law was just telling me because her grandfather was in World War I, and he was a POW he was like behind enemy lines for like 3 days, and he didn't talk
Jesus.
about it his whole life. Like he refused to ever speak about that. But like, I wish he would have. I wish he would have
Yeah.
at least written it down for like the next generation. He's like,
Yeah.
my kids. I don't want my kids ever to know what I did, but like
I get that.
prosperity. But
I get that.
yeah, sure. You got to do some.
Is this dude a dad? Is Grusch a dad?
That's a great.
Isn't that a
great
good question?
That is a good
Because
question.
if he is a dad, that means what he's doing is even more like, yeah. So,
We get it. People without kids, you guys are still people too. But
yeah, for sure. Yeah. So that's that pretty much. Listeners, if you don't know what we're talking about, we got links in the summary of the show below.
Listen to it. It's so dope.
Yeah, it's about two hours or so. It's worth it. It's very, very compelling. It's cool to see government working together. It's cool to hear these veterans tell their perspective on UFOs, UAPs, whatever fucking acronym you want to use. And it's an interesting time to be alive.
Yeah, we watch people in government cry over like who does or does not bring snacks and which snacks to the office party thing.
Correct.
Whereas like they, for this one moment, all got to do their job.
Yeah.
And like as a teacher who sometimes does his job really well with other people, like you know that feeling. I saw it like in their eyes, like we're fucking doing this. Like
a ding.
Yeah, like the
a
momentum's building. Like
mm-hmm.
woo.
Yeah, man.
I love it.
So listeners, let us know what you thought of this episode. This was a little bit off the beaten path for us.
This was fun. This is a different thing.
Yeah, this was different, but it's topical and in the news, and it's just fun to talk about fucking aliens.
Yeah,
dude.
it's hella fun.
Let's go watch some X-Files. I want to believe.
X-Files. I do. I want to believe so badly.
Yeah, I want to believe.
But I was saying this because I've been listening to a lot. I listen to a lot of like gospel music. I don't know if I told you this.
What?
I listen to a lot of gospel music.
Why?
Because it's so good.
It is good.
Like the gospel drums are like some of the best chops, and then the choir singing. And I was telling Hannah today when we were listening to it, and I was just like grooving in the truck. I was like, I really wish I was religious sometimes because I'm singing about like Jesus and Emmanuel. Like
Listen,
I'm gonna
man.
lift your name up, Emmanuel.
Listen, man. Say what you want about the Christians, but they got music down.
Yes,
They got music down. Their metal is amazing.
their metal is amazing.
Their
I listen to a
gospel
lot.
is amazing. Under Oath got me
Yeah.
into hard music.
Yes.
Like.
Yep.
Yeah. So, listeners, thank you for listening.
Thanks
to
for
us.
listening.
Kevin and I are reading books right now in the next series that we got coming up on the next
Yeah.
battles.
We got 2 fun series coming
Got
up.
2 fun series. Please bear with us while we read these books for you.
I had to reread my book. I didn't tell you that. I had to restart.
I might actually have to do the same thing.
I was like, it's too complicated. I got to restart it.
Interesting.
And redo it.
Yeah, I might be in the same boat.
It's mainly because of the names. There's a lot of names in the beginning, and I was like, I highlighted, and I was like, I'll get through it, and then I was like, nope, I have to be able to take notes while I write. I think.
Did you get in a position where you were like, did I choose the right battle?
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
I was like, I could do a battle before this battle.
Listen, this is hard.
It's a lot of work.
Podcasting is hard, folks. So the fact that you guys are here with us means the world to us.
Yes.
We appreciate you.
Thank you for letting us do this.
We got stuff coming up. We are super excited. We're not going anywhere. Again, if you haven't already done so, please rate and review our show.
Yes.
That would mean the world to us. Interact with us on social media. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you have ideas. If you want to be on the show, hit us up.
Yeah.
And until then,
Bonsai.
bonsai.